welcome to this conversation. Today I want to talk about meaning making and how the brain connects to the mind in relation to how we see our own reality. I was talking to a friend today and I was talking about how the world seems like a lot of nervous systems meeting and acknowledging each other, recognizing each other or not, or saying, "Oh, I don't like how you operate." Our nervous systems look for familiarity. So when you meet another person, your nervous system can sense theirs, can sense if there are similarities. And if they are, your brain interprets that as this is a right person for you. This is when often you'll meet someone and they feel really familiar, like you already know them. And in a way, it's because you do. It's because your nervous systems detected each other as matching. But then I thought about it further and I thought, how is this really connected to the mind and how is this connected to our experiences of our own reality? And if you think about it, the nervous system experiences the world that we live in, but the brain needs to make meaning out of those experiences because we are meaning-making creatures. But the brain can't see the world, it can't experience the world, it can only recognize the world based on what it has already seen and experienced through sensory inputs, through emotions and feelings. Your present reality is basically an interpretation of your brain of what the nervous system is sending as signals, and then it interprets those signals based on already stored memories. It's basically a predictive model. It can only make meaning out of what it has already experienced. Think of a time where you might have been walking around or driving. Ahead of you appears an object and you can't quite see that object yet. So you start to guess what it is. Maybe you think it's an animal. And maybe you're convinced, oh my God, what is that? It looks like an animal. But as you get closer, you might realize that, oh, actually it's just a rock or a log. At first, your brain might have interpreted it as something else because it based it on the shape, the color, and what it has already seen in that looked similar. So in a way, when we are born, we're born a blank slate. The brain has not experienced the world, it has not seen, heard, felt anything. But as soon as we open our eyes, we start to gather information. We start to gather information about the world, about how it feels, about what is tolerable, what isn't, who is caring, who isn't, how we survive. All this information is stored. As we carry on through the world, the brain then uses that stored information to make meaning of our direct reality. But all this information is stored in the unconscious. These aren't memories that we have access to. And if we could remember everything, if we were creatures that had access to all our memories, then we would not have as much mental health issues because we would be able to see for ourselves rather than wait for the brain to interpret. But the brain stores really difficult memories, overwhelming memories, and anything that it deems as too difficult to deal with into the unconscious to protect us for our own survival. Unfortunately, that means that it gets to translate things in ways that we kind of don't have a choice but to believe at first. What I mean by that is when you're self-aware, you get to question the meaning making that your brain is making. For example, you might be having a conversation with friends and your brain might be interpreting tone of voices or a laughter or an eye contact, whatever, into something negative. Maybe you start to feel like, oh my God, they don't like me, they hate me, they think I'm boring. Whatever the negative voice in your brain is telling you, that is just your brain trying to make meaning out of things based on what it has experienced before. And if you've experienced the world, if at an early age, from when you were born, your first interpretations, your first memories, your first experiences are negative, are difficult, then your brain is going to base every interpretation for the rest of your life based on those early memories. You can see how having a childhood that is traumatic leads to a really challenging way of life in terms of how you see and experience everything in the world, because you'll always interpret it from this baseline, from this negative worldview. Interestingly, at least I think, this also shows how adaptive the brain is, because if you think about it, when we are born, since the brain has no idea what it's about to see and experience, it means that what we experience as our society, as our rules and our way of living, that is all we know, right? Therefore, that is the only thing the brain can base its interpretations and meaning making and reality on. But what that means is that if our society was completely different, our brain would adapt just as well. Our brain would start to interpret the world based on that reality, whatever those sensory inputs would be. There was a documentary a while ago that showed a group of people that had lived in a tribe disconnected from society. They showed them a simple drawing of a 3D cube, and they could not describe what that was. We could see that that's a 3D cube because we know what a shape of a 3D cube is. Therefore, we can recognize it on a drawing. But they had never seen that. They have never seen a drawing of a 3D object. And to them, the drawing was just a bunch of lines. So that's kind of like shows how the things we see are just a prediction of what we already know. And if we have not experienced it before, it cannot exist in our reality. If you've never experienced secure attachment, love and care, your brain can't go on to the world and predict that from all the relationships you will have afterwards. Luckily, our brain is super adaptive. Our neurons never stop growing, and we can rewire and reprogram the brain to change the worldviews. And the way we do that is by allowing unconscious memory to come through in a safe space, in a safe way, allowing what the nervous system could tolerate to expand so that it can release some of those unconscious memories that it bases reactions and emotions and relationships on, so they can come to our awareness. And once they are into our awareness and we can tolerate them and we can analyze them and understand them, we can then start to question them and we can start to challenge them. That's psychology. That's how psychotherapy works. Psychotherapy helps to challenge the meanings that the brain is making from reality, because someone else who has experienced a different reality from you will interpret the same experience in a different way. This is why there are people with different personalities, different realities, different experiences, different meaning making. Therapy, in this case, helps us to overcome and rewire the brain into more positive or more realistic meaning making. So for example, if someone has social anxiety and they get anxious before a social event, that's because the brain has already predicted what might happen during those social situations. But when we actually allow the experience to happen and nothing dramatic or drastic happen, the brain then gets to see, oh, our prediction was wrong. Our prediction needs to readapt. Of course, this doesn't happen very quickly. It doesn't happen at the snap of a finger. It happens through a prolonged period of time with a lot of exposure, but it absolutely can be rewired. The brain sits in complete darkness inside your skull. It never actually gets to see or experience reality. It only receives sensory signals, and yet it has to make complete meaning making from those experiences. And yet somehow it constructs a seamless and rich experience of what's going on out there, or an actual reality. The brain never experiences the real world. It only experiences signals. And so if the brain is constantly basing that reality on memory, you can see how two people in the same room experiencing the same thing will actually have a complete different version of that reality because their memories will be different. And in a way, it also means that we're always living slightly in the past. So that would mean that the unconscious is the only real part, and the conscious is actually just a hallucination of the brain. Anyway, I hope I'm not scaring you into this. The reason why I share this is to show you that the brain is, as much as it controls how we experience the world, we can also influence it into how it makes meaning of our own world. You can let your brain make all the decisions with regards to your emotions and how you experience them and how you respond to the world, but you can also take part into that by manipulating the brain, essentially, by changing its programming. By saying, okay, you've stored all this memory, but that was the past. Here's the present. This is how I want to experience the world now. And that way you can shift your reality, essentially, without going into too much woo-woo. One simple way that you can do this is by paying attention to the things that pop into your head as you go through the world. Write them down if you can. If you can, write even 30 minutes of what your brain is telling you per day, or less than that. Even 5 minutes is plenty of thoughts to write down, and challenge those thoughts. You know, if your brain says something awful to you, then challenge that. And you can challenge it directly. Some people say that it helps to talk to the brain, you know, as if it's something external, as if it's another person. So rather than say I, you then refer to the brain, you know, as you. Why are you doing this? So when the brain starts to say things like, you know, this will go wrong, or this person's going to leave, people won't accept me, etc. Those are all outputs from the prediction model that is based on previous experiences and currently running on autopilot and shaping your present and how you perceive the world before you even have the chance to make your own meaning. So when you challenge a thought like that, you're not just doing something psychological, you're also doing something neurological, because then you're using neuroplasticity to your advantage. I mean, neuroplasticity is always going to be to your advantage, to be honest. But what you're doing is introducing a prediction error into the model. You're showing your prediction model that, wait, this isn't actually correct. This isn't actually how reality is right now, although it was correct in the past. This is also a little bit how CBT works, cognitive behavioral therapy. Although I'm not a big fan of CBT when it comes to trauma, so I won't expand on that too much. I'm not a big fan of CBT when it comes to recovering from trauma, although it helps some people. That's a topic for another conversation. So, to conclude this short video, we've talked about the brain as a prediction model. We've talked about the brain never having really seen the world and living in a dark box. And so what you see when you open your eyes and you look around is not so much a window into the world, it's more so an interpretation of a painting that we can't really have access to anymore. And so although we are walking around right now in the present, the brain can be interpreting that reality based on something that happened in 1994. Or worse, on something that happened on the worst day you've ever had. Or a version of yourself that hadn't yet learned all the things that you have right now, that wasn't yet capable of all the things that you are capable of right now. When you know that this is happening, then you can start to do something about it. Because we're not slaves to our brain. We can still control the narrative. The simple act of questioning a thought can already have a huge impact on reprogramming how the brain interprets the world. And this is actually how growth works. Whether we are aware of the brain working as a prediction model or not, it's the past releasing its grip on the present little by little. But I think there is something really hopeful in that. The story that the brain tells you about the world is not the final story. And every new experience, every new emotion, every new day is a chance to rewrite your programming. So if you take anything with you from this video, is this. Ask yourself today, if you could experience something for the first time, how might that change your expectations of it. Anyhow, this is the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope I didn't scare you. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for being here. I'll see you in the next video.